on February 14th, 2022. And we'll just start with the first item on the agenda, which is approval of the agenda. And Chris, you circulated that agenda in an email to everybody. So anybody want to put a motion to approve the agenda?
Sure, I will put forward the motion to approve the agenda for tonight.
Okay, thank you, Cecile. Any seconder?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Christine. And any objections? Motion passed. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes, which Nikki had sent out, well, I think like, I don't know, 3 weeks ago or something. Nikki, you were on it. And so does anybody have any comments on the minutes or any suggestions for changing anything? Okay, so I'll put does anybody want to put a motion to approve the minutes for January 10th, 2022?
I'll put them forward.
Thank you, Wade. And a seconder?
Sure, I'll be the seconder.
Thank you, Cecile. Anybody oppose the motion to approve the minutes? Okay, and motion is passed for approval of the minutes. What about business arising from the minutes? And just going to, I had them open and I closed them just now. I think, pardon me, I closed the minutes.
Jen, I think we'll probably cover everything that might have been actions within the minutes through the agenda.
Perfect. Sounds great. So let's move on to the Emerging Artist Bursary. And Chris, do you want to speak to that?
No, I do not. Nikki does.
Okay, Nikki, how about you speaking to the Emerging Artist Bursary?
Thank you. I think everyone should have received the edits in the final reporting document. So just looking for any feedback, especially on the rubric, because I was trying to take in the feedback you provided at the last meeting and some of the conversation that we had when we were reviewing the application. So I just wanted to make sure that I had accurately captured some of the changes that you had suggested. And I also wanted to identify areas where we might be able to improve. And sorry if I've gone kind of off track here. I was getting the live stream of the YouTube of this meeting at the same time as we were talking. So I got really confused for a second, so apologies. Chris, did you have something that you wanted to say?
I actually just remembered that Brandy isn't here. And so no, I didn't want to say, oh, here she is. Hi, all. Something weird is happening when I try to open the meeting. First, it says it is organized by Eleanor. Oh, she's trying to go. Brandy's trying to get in. Nick, is she?
No, she's in the old link.
Okay, I'll send her the new one. And I will put my hand down. Okay.
Cecile, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you really captured well what all the discussions, the clarifications we wanted. My one question was revolving about including the high school student into this rubric. Is it going to be included or is that a separate?
Great question. So the high school students should be able, we should be able to reflect the high school students within this as well, because remember that, or what I was trying to adjust within here is that we haven't made it impossible for a high school student to qualify for the overall bursary, as well as being evaluated sort of in the same categories of critique here. And I guess I'm not sure if you have the rubric open with you. It's been so long since I've looked at this, but I wanted to talk about a couple of different things, things that that I shifted in here. And Chris and I have had a conversation about this, but I'm really interested to hear what you think. So the first I'll talk about is the actual scoring for each category. So there were a few comments arising in the last meetings where perhaps the breadth of scoring was too broad. And so it was kind of hard to pick out how you would score in each category. So what I did was we've got 4 categories through which we would evaluate each application. So weak, adequate, good, and exemplary. And in each category, you'd pick out of 2 scores. So you would have a score of 1 or 2 for weak. So something would either score on the low end of weak or on the high end. So if you are in a position where, you know, something is weak, but it doesn't quite meet the criteria and adequate, you would score it on the high end of weak, and so on for each of them. So we kind of have it should be a little bit easier to score within the categories, especially if an application has some of what's in the category of evaluation, but not necessarily all of it, but it's a bit more than the other category. And then what I was hoping was that would allow us to actually have more fruitful conversation if the scores were closer, because it would be easier for you to score that. And I think it would kind of eliminate some of the differences that each of us brings to our evaluation of the applications. So I'd love to get your feedback specifically on the scoring and whether you're comfortable with that, or whether each should be, you know, out of 3 instead of out of 2, like if you wanted to have a middle range, or whether, you know, high and a low in each category works for you.
Nikki, can you check the waiting room to see if Brandy's in it?
He's not here.
Okay.
I liked that you gave those indications, because I think it gives permission to the people who are judging to actually, yes, tinker a bit. Because when I first looked at the previous rubric, I felt I didn't know if I could, you know, just give half the points or 2/3, or this, I think, gives the person permission to do so. So I like that. Now, I don't have an opinion between 2 notes or 3, really.
What I thought, you'll see too in each of the areas, so how we're evaluating each application. So we have artist statement, the statement of intent, the portfolio, and the experience. I have put a suggested weight in each of those categories. So what I would do is create a form that you could fill in for each application, and it would automatically create the value for you as you go through. So you don't have to worry so much about counting the score. It would just be updated sort of as you go. So I think that would make it a bit easier. So as you're kind of reviewing this rubric as well, kind of thinking about whether the weights are fair. And I tried to do it in a way that also considered high school applicants. So things like experience are important, but they're not as important as the artist statement or the statement of intent. Because of course, more senior emerging artists or emerging artists with more experience or who've been practicing longer as emerging artists will have more experience. So just trying to create a bit more fairness that way. And other changes that I made, we won't evaluate the application in terms of like the overall application in terms of weak, adequate, good, or exemplary. It's either the application is complete or it is incomplete, and incomplete applications won't be evaluated. So that's no longer something that you have to worry about. And references, we'll just request that each of the applicants submit 2 names. I think I said 2 names. We'll provide the names and contact information for the references, and every reference will get the same kind of form to complete. So we're asking each reference for the same information. And then, Town of Kenmore administration will evaluate those references, and then we will provide that information in the jury meeting as you review the application. So you don't have to evaluate the references. Less the reference not being necessarily like they might speak well of the artist, but the reference themselves may not be strong, so that way we're not unfairly penalizing an artist if they have a weak reference, but we'll be soliciting specific information, whether or not the artist can meet deadlines or whether the project they've proposed is actually within their skill set or their range of abilities, things like that. So that's what's in there. So that's another area that we've pulled out where you will no longer have to evaluate that.
I feel really good about how the rubric is set up. I think you did a great job.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked it when I looked it over. I think the weighting was good and the scoring makes a lot of sense now. I like the examples that you gave too about how we could try to find where the points are that we're marking. That was really helpful.
Fantastic. So if that looks good, we will update it for the next emerging artist bursary, the next round of applicants.
We should have a motion, Nick. Jen, do you want to call for a motion to approve it as presented?
Okay. So motion to approve the rubric as presented. Anyone want to be a seconder?
I'll second it.
Great. Does everybody approve of the motion? Great. Motion passed.
And yes, Brandy, it will be included. So we included it this time too with the application. So I'm not sure if you just saw in the chat, Brandy asked whether or not the rubric would go out with the next call. And the answer is yes, it will, and it will be available online so that people can use it as they're building their application, because we really believe that this should be a learning opportunity for the applicants. And so they know really where to pour their efforts in, and to also understand, how they qualify within this. So that's there.
I just want to say, I think Nikki did a great job on this. And the good thing about it is that when we're providing feedback to artists, there's a lot of verbiage within that document that we can give feedback on, where before it was more difficult to give feedback because you're really thinking through the application and trying to give constructive criticism, but something they can build on to move forward. And in doing this rubric, Nikki's provided that. So it's going to be helpful from the front end and the back end sort of thing. So I think it's awesome.
And then I guess from my end of things that I've been up to since our last meeting, I put together the final report form for the bursary recipients. And I'm not sure if anyone had any feedback or if you felt like anything was missing from this feedback form. I kind of took a look at the Canada Council for the Arts, one of their feedback forms for some of their grants. So it kind of follows a very similar format and requesting similar information, although I took some things out. And my hope, the goal for this as well is for that to be provided with the call so that people understand what kind of reporting they will be required to do should they receive the bursary. And so, what kind of information do they keep track of as once they've received their bursary, and once we're soliciting that feedback from them on how it works.
I guess I was curious, an additional question that might be interesting to ask them is how what they actually use the funds for differed from their original application, and maybe an explanation as to why. I'm not sure that all artists end up actually using the money exactly as it was originally intended, and if there's a variance, it would be interesting to know more about that and why it happened.
Great suggestion. Oh, I'm not sure why. I'm sorry. Is it really unclear? I'm not sure what's going on my end. In terms
It's going like up it goes up and down and up and down, and it's
I'll plug some headphones in. Maybe that will help.
maybe that might help. Yeah, and I just broke a monitor.
Go ahead, Brandy.
Yeah, I'm just curious, how much time do we give them to report after they've received the bursary?
We didn't determine a timeline, but I would say that I would like the artist to submit this in month 12 after having received the bursary, or I guess after 11 months of having the bursary, that 12th month, that's kind of my thought process. So they have a year to use that bursary, but we hadn't come up with a firm timeline for that yet.
I think that based on, sorry, I do have my hand up, but I'm just going to watch in. I think based on whatever they put in for their project proposal, I think we should ask for timelines for the proposal as well. When do they hope to accomplish these things? So then you'll know when it's supposed to be wrapping up. So upon completion of their project, if their project is a 2-year contract, a 2-year project, maybe we want an update after a year and then the final report after 2. So maybe it has to do with how long their project's going to take. I'm not entirely sure, but we might, like I was looking for when Nikki and I first looked at the report, I was looking for a deadline for submission for the report as well. But I started thinking about it afterwards and I thought, I wonder if it is a longer project or if they've met some kind of barrier. I think they do need to update us about that, but I think that we should ask for timelines within the application.
Yeah, it was just the word long-term impact that kind of triggered that question for me. Like, what is long-term impact? And, the short-term impact for sure, maybe a year. But if we're asking about long-term impact, like I would think that's a couple years down the road. So that's where I was wondering, when are we anticipating getting this back from them?
Yeah, I think those are really great questions. First, can I ask, is this a little bit better? No better. Okay. Maybe, I don't know. I think that like the reason that I didn't put a deadline on this form is that I don't think that the form should have to change every single iteration of this bursary that we have. Like it's really administratively onerous to go in and to have to update dates every single time. And this form, I think, can be sent directly to the artist or live on the website. And when bursary applicants receive the bursary, we provide that deadline for them. I would also say, like, perhaps part of this bursary is to support artists working on a project within a year, because administratively to keep track of reports ongoing from artists, like if we get them in year 1 and then we have to like get them again in year 2, I think that's a lot for us to truly keep track of for what is a relatively small bursary.
Could you say something along the lines of 6 months after receiving the bursary, something like that, instead of like a definitive time?
Yeah, like somewhere between 6 and 12 months after receiving the bursary.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And Brandy, to sort of answer your question, I put the long-term impact in there because some of the applications that we had received talked about how, someone wanted to try like a new medium or explore a new area within their artistic practice. So I thought maybe talking about the long-term impact was like whatever this bursary did allowed for that person to start to shift a focus or to try something new. But if it kind of indicates that we're looking for too much information based on what we're providing, I'm not at all married to understanding the long-term impact for an artist with this.
Yeah, it might just be speculative for them.
Yeah, maybe we just say expected long-term impact or something like that, because they can't know after 6 to 12 months what the long-term impact is going to be, but they can know what their desired long-term impact will be, or what they, yeah, I think that's probably, does that answer it, Brandy? Yeah.
Have we followed up with some of the Lamp House Bursary recipients from the past after like 5 or 10 years?
We did on the 15th, on the 10th anniversary of the Mayor Spotlight on the Arts, we contacted all the past recipients to find out where they were and what they were doing. So we haven't done that of late, like over the last 5 years, because it's been 5, yeah, but we did do it the first 10 years.
Was that feedback helpful to you guys?
It was interesting because, of course, when people, primarily it was high school students or just out of high school students that were getting the bursaries. And some of them did pursue careers in, well, most of them did pursue careers in the arts, but found, of course, that they couldn't make a living right away and had to go into some other things. Some of them, like I think our very first recipient, or maybe our second, Mikey Grant, is still working in film in Vancouver. So a number of them are still doing those kinds of things, and they do keep in touch with me. And others have either thought, I've given it a good try, but I'm going to have to branch off into other areas. And Shane Arsenault, he was one of the, I do still keep in touch with some of them. He was somebody who won for photography, and now he's also wood turning and doing photography. So, yeah, a number of the bands that have been honored before have gone off to do solo careers. So they're all kind of in their art still. Probably only a couple are no longer practicing, but the rest are either in or have branched off into other things. So I think our bursary's done some good. Do you need more information, Nick, about the report, or do you feel like you have what you need?
I think I've got what I need. So my takeaways are like I really like Christine's suggestion about whether, and we can put this in the financial section of the document, about whether or not the recipients spent the money on what they thought they would, and if not, what are the variances and why. And it doesn't have to be extremely detailed, but just as a point of sort of curiosity, and it might actually help us evaluate applications in the future. I also like Wade's suggestion of like a submission of the reporting form within 6 to 12 months, creating that space, but knowing that there is a hard deadline at the 12-month point, but we can kind of start to prod, and maybe someone's ready to submit earlier, especially if what they wanted to spend their money on came quite quickly. And then also I've taken what Brandy has noted about the long-term impacts, and just use it as more of a ask more of a speculative question. So I'll make those adjustments, and then we'll send out that reporting form to our 2 recipients.
Okay, then we probably need a motion to approve the report as with the amendments, with the suggested amendments.
Okay, motion to approve. Any seconders?
I think you need to say motion to approve as amended.
Oh, I just thought that Chris just said that, but
Oh.
okay, sure. Motion to approve as amended. And great, we have a seconder. Anyone object?
Sorry, I didn't see who made the motion and who seconded.
I made the motion.
Okay,
Wade seconded.
And I seconded it.
thank you.
And then
Okay.
I think-
Motion passed.
Did we
No,
actually vote on that?
I think there were no objections, correct?
Okay.
Motion passed. Okay, moving on to public art and the mural overview. And is that you, Chris, speaking to that? Is that you, Nikki, speaking to that?
I guess it's another me one. I have sent out to everyone the timeline for the mural call. So I'll just run over those dates again quickly in case you don't have it open in front of you. So the call for proposals will go out on February 22nd. April 19th, submissions are due. On April 29th, the shortlisted artists will be contacted. From May 13th until June 13th is our timeline for the artist residencies. So we'll work with the artists to determine when they can be here and just a schedule of when they can be here. On August 8th, the final design submission from the shortlisted artists is due. On August 12th, the artists are informed of the final decision. So quite a quick turnaround between the deadline for the final submissions and for the decision. And then the mural installation will occur between September 6th and 16th. The final date for the mural itself is September 15th, but we do have an extra day of wiggle room in there. So the September 6th falls after the Labor Day weekend. So things are just a little bit quieter then. And then, yeah, we've got that space in there, the 10 days. So that is the timeline, if anyone has questions about that.
Is 2 weeks to do that installation enough?
We're hoping so.
Yeah, okay.
I see here, oh, go ahead, Cecile. Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. What the residencies will be like? What are you envisioning exactly? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah, no, great question. It kind of brings us into the next point on the agenda. So Chris and I had the opportunity to meet with someone last week who has a space available for the shortlisted artists to stay during their residency. So it's kind of in the downtown core. It's a great little cabin where they can live for their duration of time here. And so that kind of helps us to help them get to Canmore. So kind of creating that space where they don't have to worry about booking an Airbnb or a hotel. So we've got that space already allocated to us very generously. And so I'm just finishing up the call now, but part of what the residency is the opportunity for the artists to kind of engage with the community. So learn about Canmore and then also to have sort of that cultural exchange. So we get to also learn about that artist. So one of the requirements of the residency, so that we're going to say the residency is a minimum of 3 days because we don't want someone to come in, stay overnight, and then immediately leave right away. We want to have an opportunity for that artist to engage with this committee, engage with the community, and engage with the space a little bit more broadly. So we're kind of saying a residency timeline of 3 to 5 days. And part of the residency is we're going to look for like some type of presentation. So we're giving some prompts in the art call to what that could look like, but it's going to vary person to person, and we want to make sure that we are being really inclusive and not prescriptive of what a presentation would look like. But anything from a talking circle to maybe something more formal, like a presentation with a slideshow, anything is acceptable there, but we're going to look to the artist to give us some indication of what they can do for that presentation. And we're hoping also that as part of the residency, maybe members of this committee or our public art committee, which we are going to establish also during, or at least partially established during this meeting, can engage with that artist and function almost as like a host to the person while they are here. But really, yeah, we're looking for great engagement, some knowledge sharing. We want to know about this artist, their culture, anything that kind of gives us an idea of who they are, and their storytelling is sort of part of this. Chris, go ahead.
When I was hosting artists before, I just want to give you an idea of what you may be volunteering for. When we asked that we're looking for members of this committee to perhaps host someone, when I was the person that was taking the artists around, I would take them on a little bit of a hike, probably just up to Grassy Lakes, just so they could see the pictographs and get an idea of that area, because they're interested in both the natural resources, the cultural resources, the human resources, and our history. So I found that if I took them over and showed them the museum and left them be there for a bit. I took them for a hike to Grassy Lakes. I took them on a bit of a walking tour of our public art. I took them along the river. I talked about the history of place. It's just that kind of a thing where you're spending probably the better part of an afternoon or sometimes a full day with a particular artist. And, they might have things they want to know about as well. They might want to meet somebody from the Stoney Nakoda Nation if they're not from there themselves. They may want to, like I said, go for a little bit of a hike or find out about, I took them through Elevation Place so I could explain what was going on at Elevation Place. This is where we gathered to do this, or, maybe we walked over to the rec center, maybe we went into the library, we did those sorts of things. But basically just a tour around town, just to show them who we were. And in the evening, often the Public Art Committee, or in this case, perhaps this committee, would meet with them to just have a meal together so we could all talk about things. But it would be great if rather than Nikki or myself having to tour all three of the shortlisted artists around, if somebody else would do it so they could get a different perspective. Maybe they could go out and find out about forest play, Heidi, which is what, maybe they could do a tour of Elk Run, Jen. There's lots of different things that they could be doing. We try to expose them to the art and artists in this community, but I think in this case, they probably would be interested in what happens with our Stoney Nakoda neighbors as well. So there's lots of great opportunity there, and it's a lot of fun touring people. Like, I love it myself. It's a nice thing to do, and you do find out a lot about the artists. So just so when you put your hand up what you're volunteering for.
I see Brandy's interested, so that's perfect. You also don't have to decide right now. Just kind of planting the seed for you so we can talk about it in the upcoming months. So that's, go ahead, Heidi.
Yeah, I was just curious that this is assuming that it's someone who's not from here. How is it broadcast? Like, what kind of channels might artists hear about this call for submissions?
Another great question, and it's perfect because it leads us into sort of the next topics in the agenda. So we have some areas where we can post the call. So on Akimbo, and we've got contacts, through different organizations where Chris and I can post the artist call ourselves. That will go out to the arts community, but I'm hoping to kind of mine all of you if you have recommendations or suggestions, or if you're willing to also help us post the call to get out to your lists of artists or to organizations that you may be aware of that we're not aware of, where these calls could go. We're looking for your help to help us disseminate this as far as we can. So just as a reminder, the call is open for artists on Treaty 6, 7, 8, and then the unceded territory in Northern British Columbia, or what's commonly known as Northern British Columbia. So that's our area for artists, and you can share the call as of February 22nd. So you can see it, you'll see it ahead of time. But on February 22nd, that's when we'll make it public. And, we'll use the town of Canmore's channels, as many as we have in those areas. But the town of Canmore is municipal government as well. So we're definitely not going to capture everyone who may be interested or who could apply. So yeah, really reaching out to any or all of you for your help there. And Chris and I have talked about places like band offices as well, as a place where we could go, where we could share this. Arts organizations. There's a great list that we found online. Chris, do you remember the name of that website that you gave me from Dawn?
It's Indigenous Arts, right? Indigenous Arts. I think it's Indigenous Arts.
Yeah, indigenousarts.org or something like that.
Yeah, I think so.
Anyway, they've got a great list there of Indigenous arts organizations.
And maybe it could be, Nick, that we could divide up the territories, and we could all maybe send to band offices, or at our Truth and Reconciliation meetings that we have. Nikki and I are on a TRC team within the town of Canmore. We've been told to put it out into the job people, like, the employment offices at band offices and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of band offices across Saskatchewan, Alberta, and Northern British Columbia. So I'm sure that if we split up a list, we could all get the call out there. So if there's somebody who's willing to help out in that area too, that would be great.
I'll reach out to the group by email. So again, you don't have to do anything just yet. Are there any questions about the call, the process, the residency, anything that might have piqued your interest? Go ahead, Heidi.
I just have a question for the turnaround time from, I think it's the 8th to the 12th. Our meeting, I'm guessing we'll divide a public arts committee. I think that's what I'm hearing. And then on the 8th, would that still be a scheduled meeting? So the jury would have until that evening plus a couple days maybe to, I guess the question is, how long do you have to consider the submissions?
The turnaround is very short. So if the deadline is the end of day or even midday on August the 8th, the members of the jury won't see anything realistically until the night of the 8th or first thing in the morning on the 9th. So we would have to determine who would be the artist for this project on August the 11th.
Okay.
So it's a very short turnaround so that we could inform the artists on the 12th.
Heidi, keep in mind though, Heidi, just because this is the Cultural Advisory Committee, this very likely will not be the jury. It'll be an independent jury that'll be made up of a group of people that will not be us. Okay, so it won't be that we're having a meeting like a Cultural Advisory Committee meeting and a jury meeting. It'll be two separate groups of people meeting, other than Nikki that'll be at both.
So we're not required to know the rubric ahead of time and make sure we give. Okay.
The members of the jury will receive the rubric ahead of time, so everything will be familiar, and there will only be 3 submissions to evaluate, because we're going to have 3 shortlisted artists as part of this. So the process won't be as laborious as seeing all of the initial submissions and getting ready to shortlist the artists. And having the artists do presentations during their residency will also help kind of inform how you understand the applicants for this project. So the turnaround time works, it will work for selecting the final artist, and we'll set the jury up so that when they receive the submissions, a lot of questions about rubric or anything like that will have already been answered. And Brandy, to answer your question, yes, you can see the call before it goes out. So I guess then, because so we had a public art committee before, and now that the public art committee as a larger committee has been reimagined as the Cultural Advisory Committee. So we're looking to form a public art subcommittee. Chris, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to say about the public art subcommittee.
I do actually. So Public Art Subcommittee will speak to, I don't know if all of you or any of you hadn't have an opportunity to review the cultural master plan, but you'll see in the plan that there's 4 main areas. And I know we've talked about this before, but one is cultural placemaking, and cultural placemaking is where public art sits. Okay, so whoever would sit on the public art subcommittee would actually be looking after cultural placemaking. It would be more of a cultural placemaking subcommittee. So we would want one person from this committee to chair that committee and bring back whatever they have from that committee to these committee meetings. It doesn't mean that more than one of you can't be on that committee. It just means we need to have one person that will chair it. And then we would get outside people to be on that subcommittee as well. That would be imagined by whoever's chairing. Then we would go through, and you'll see later in the agenda, we'll be looking for somebody who's going to work on cultural events, so cultural initiatives. And then later on, we'll talk about cultural sector support. So 3 areas of the cultural master plan where we're going to need subcommittee. So the first one, and that's where we're looking for someone to chair that committee from this group, is the Public Art Committee. Is anyone interested in chairing that committee?
Right now, we don't have any dates or like anticipated meeting times for the Public Art Committee. But that committee will be involved with things like the mural, working through that, any other sort of larger public art projects that we might have. So just to give you an idea, so there's nothing firm in there, but it's not going to meet likely as it won't meet as frequently as this committee unless we have like a significant number of projects that suddenly pop up. But you've seen the work plan for this year, so there aren't large public art projects sort of ongoing. So the mural is really the focus for this moment, but it will build.
It'll also be defining who should be on the public art jury, like not the person's name, but what should the makeup of that jury look like? Like where should you solicit members for that jury position? And then working through the process with Nikki, you know, of maybe you get, I don't know, 42 applications and you'll have to, you know, you'll be privy to the information there. You'll also you'll be chairing the jury. So the person that chairs the Public Art Committee this time will also be the person that goes over and chairs that jury. Okay, just so you're aware of that. Heidi, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a feel as to the additional time commitment between cultural advisory, like it's in addition to, and then you'd have one person coming to this meeting, or I guess all of us would be on the committee anyways, to report back what was. Okay. And is it again once a month?
We don't
Once
have
every couple months.
We don't have a firm schedule, but it won't be once a month. But you can anticipate, based on the timelines for the mural,
Okay.
that there are a couple of meetings in there. So there will be a meeting in April. There will be a meeting before April so that we've got everyone together going through the rubric for the initial submissions, getting everybody set up that way. There will be a meeting in April to go over the submissions and to evaluate them. So everyone will receive that information in advance. And then there will be the jury meeting for that. I'm guessing, and then of course, you know, the final submissions are due in August. So there likely won't be a meeting in July. But we might see, at least we'll definitely have one meeting in March. And we're already in February. So yeah, it'll be March and April for sure. You can count on those as the first meetings.
Do we need somebody tonight to actually put in that position, or is that something we can give a little time to?
I think since we've put you on the spot, if you just kind of want to review your personal calendars, I don't know, Chris, what you're thinking, but if someone could give me an indication, by the end of, oh, I see your message there, Cecile. Maybe if you could let me know by the end of the week if you would be interested in chairing, and we can talk about this over email and then solidify the Public Art Committee in our next Cultural Advisory Committee meeting.
It will also be important for to decide who from outside of this group might be interested in being on a public art committee. So if you know someone who would be great on that committee and that could help out for this 1 year as a member of that subcommittee, that would be great as well. And probably the person who's going to be the chair of that committee will work with Nikki to start thinking about, okay, who else should we get to come on this committee? Who could we approach? So that'll be probably what you're going to be looking at in March as well.
Are we looking at also needing a cultural initiatives subcommittee chair
We are.
tonight? Okay, so we will need 2 chairs from tonight's meeting.
It doesn't have to be tonight, but I would suggest it would be soon because we're just kind of jumping all over here, but that's okay because we're going to get to the end game. But we also will need someone to work on cultural initiatives because we have National Indigenous Peoples Day coming. And so that's one of the cultural initiatives that the town of Canmore does. And we were hoping that someone who would chair that, like chair the initiatives committee, might help out with a artisan fair that would be part of National Indigenous Peoples Day. We've had some interest from Chiniki College that some of their students might be interested in doing that. So if there's somebody who's interested in leading cultural initiatives, that would be wonderful. And eventually we'll be looking for someone who will be working in culture sector support. And that's going to be the micro grants program. So I just wanted everybody to be aware of all 3 areas that we'll be looking for chairs in so that you're not volunteering for one thing and wait a minute, I would rather have been doing that. So those will be the 3. But the ones that we're looking for right away are public art and and cultural initiatives. Thanks, Jen.
Nikki, did you have anything more to add to the public art subcommittee conversation?
I don't. Maybe I will reach out to Cecile and Heidi sort of separately and off this so we can just sort of talk. And what I will try to do tomorrow is actually put together a calendar of when the Public Art Committee can anticipate meeting, and that might help you with your decision making as well. So just creating that space for you to look in your own calendars ahead of time and what the time commitments are.
Great. Okay, so does anybody else have any other questions with regards to that? The Public Art Subcommittee? Okay, so we'll just move on to number 6, cultural events. Is that going to be you, Nikki, speaking to that as well?
That is going to be me.
Oh, it's Chris.
Yes, I will speak this time.
Okay.
So I just wanted to give a bit of an overview about what the cultural initiatives person would be doing. So cultural initiatives, as far as the cultural master plan, speaks about cultural celebrations as well as community art. So the person that would be working on that committee or would be chairing that committee will help out with National Indigenous Peoples Day, Mayor Spotlight on the Arts, and whenever there's community art projects. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to speak to regarding that. But like I said earlier, the most imminent thing is National Indigenous Peoples Day, and we would look to that person to help out with artisan booths as part of an art fair for that day. So I don't know if somebody from this committee would be interested in chairing that committee or being on that committee, even if you're not interested in chairing it. You would be working with our cultural initiatives person, which would be, well, it'll be morphing. It'll start off with Nikki and I, who are both working on National Indigenous Peoples Day, but will eventually become our events person who will be working on Mayor Spotlight on the Arts as we move forward. We're in this state of transition because of the cultural master plan, so it'll take us a year or 2 to get there, but that's what it looks like right now. So I don't know if anybody is interested in that particular committee, either chairing or sitting on it or both. Either or both.
Chris, I'm just curious where this information is in the cultural master plan, and just wrapping my head around this. So there's this committee, there's 3 subcommittees. Each of those 3 subcommittees has 6 or 7 people as well.
Yeah, but they wouldn't, yes, well, maybe 5 people. It's hard to know, like however many people it takes to, yeah, to move them forward. When we had the Mayor Spotlight Committee before, we had probably 5 people on that committee. It was led by Melanie Busby for some time, and she was the person that led that committee. She was a member of the Public Art Committee, but chaired kind of the Mayor Spotlight Committee. So I would say if you had maybe 5 people on those committees, that would be fine. And we would need 3, and it is in the master plan. It speaks to the initiatives of what the 3 positions, other than the leadership position, would do as part of the cultural development department. And so each of those positions will need an advisor from this committee.
And
is
so
basically
are
what
those working committees?
They
And then
are.
they're working committees. Okay.
Well, this whole board, I mean, this whole committee is, this committee right here is an advisory committee. The hope is that that as the chair, you would help move the initiatives forward, but it wouldn't be, it's our work. Like we at the town of Canmore are the people that are paid to do the work. It's a lot of work, and we could use advising, and we could need volunteer. We do need volunteers on the ground to help us get these things done. So in that way, they're working committees. But as far as the work, it's already defined. Like we already know we already know there's going to be a National Indigenous Peoples Day. We are meeting with, we'll be doing talking circuits with elders and community members to find out how they want to celebrate that day. But we're going to need this group's help to try and move those initiatives forward. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And then, I mean, maybe this is just maybe this conversation for another day, and I just need to like do more homework. But then I'm just trying to think about what this committee does then, and how that kind of, what is the role of this committee then, if those committees are covering all the areas?
Well, those 3 the person from this committee that's on those committees this committee couldn't possibly do all of that work, right? So that's why these subcommittees are coming down and breaking and then doing some of that work and bringing it forward to this committee. Things will be ratified at this committee. If there's things that need to be voted on, this is where they're voted for. It's like, Jen, it's like the Arts Place Committee, where they're Arts Place Board, where under that board, there's all kinds of committees, but we all have suggestions. We all contribute to discussion here at this committee. And then you take it back to the subcommittee and say, this is what we've talked about at this committee. How would you like to move forward? You know, this is more of a higher level, and then you're more into the detail of what needs to be done at the next level. Is that a good way to describe it, Jen? Or maybe you can go ahead.
No, it is. I feel like it's almost like this committee needs more bodies on it to be able to split into the subcommittees.
Which is why we would have to recruit from outside for committee members on these committees, right?
Yeah.
So that's where we'll get more bodies.
Yeah. And would it be the chairs of these committees that would be recruiting for the bodies? Or would there be like I don't know, like some kind of call out for committee members? Or
I don't know. We'll have to decide that. I mean, this is a brand new committee. We're all just figuring it out as we go, right? So yeah. So it might be that that if it's you, Brandy, and you're going to be working in cultural initiatives, that it'll just be you working with us until a subcommittee can be formed. You know, it might be that sort of thing. It might be this whole group working cultural initiatives until we can define the work and break off. But just knowing that that's going to be the end goal, right? It might take us a bit of time, but the Public Art Committee, I think, is quite important at this time.
Right.
Yeah, the others we can get to as we go. And it might be that we continue to discuss everything for the other two committees at this committee meeting until we can branch off. It's just a work in progress.
I think I share similar concerns to Brandy. And maybe it's just a lack of experience in this committee world, but multiple subcommittees and people trying to chair those and limited, like I have no bandwidth to chair other committees right now whatsoever in my life. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that world. So yeah, just finding more people and finding chairs and the time that takes, as opposed to potentially a couple more meetings for us. I don't know. I guess I'm not opposed to a couple of more meetings here to move some of those wickets forward if necessary, as opposed to.
That may be how it goes.
Yeah.
That may be how it goes. I do think that it does talk about a public art subcommittee, definitely within the cultural master plan. And as far as juries go, Brandy, we only decide what the jury makeup is going to be, and then we advertise for jurors. So then people apply to be on our jury, or we target people to be on those juries. Like maybe we'll, if we know we want artists on that, we'll put out a call for artists who want to sit on the jury, or we'll, community members that want to be on a jury, or we'll look for somebody from Treaty 7 that wants to be on a jury. Right now, we should have a Treaty 7 member on this committee. We have space for that. We don't have one. So there's room for this committee to grow, because we have a couple positions that haven't been filled on this committee. So that'll be helpful as well. And as I said, this work might be done all by this committee, but I think we will find there will have to be extra meetings, or these meetings will have to run a little bit longer to get the work done that we need to get done and move things forward. So
then a total side note, just for those that are writing messages in the chat doesn't get recorded or isn't transparent to the folks that are watching the YouTube videos. Just so if you've got questions you actually want recorded or answered there, then chat's probably not a great place for it. But
Sorry, I'm a chatter.
I'm a chatter too, but this is just if you didn't know that, because I didn't know that until very recently. So
Okay.
that people can or cannot see them.
they cannot.
They cannot. So if you do need to say something, that's the place. Okay.
Yeah, you need to say it.
Okay.
Yeah. I just wanted to note too that, when it comes to the public art committee, well, I can speak for both Chris and I, like the work is not the responsibility of the committee alone to do. So if you were chairing the public art committee, it's not your responsibility to do all of that work. I am here to do that work, but I need a person to help move that forward, and who can kind of report back to this committee, so that I'm not just talking about it all the time, and so that we've got sort of different perspectives voiced here. And I think some things that we could anticipate is that we would need a jury for the mural in particular anyway. So if you were interested in doing that, like those meetings would have to go outside of this committee meeting as well anyway, just simply because of the timeline. So hopefully that doesn't put too much pressure on the meetings that you're already attending, because Wade, I really hear what you're saying. And as if anybody wants to have more meetings after 2 years of just being online and having lots of meetings. So hopefully it will kind of create an atmosphere where you're actually getting to contribute more than just listening to Chris and I reporting on what's happening. And it will give you the opportunity to be involved in some of the ways that you expressed in your applications as being part of the Cultural Advisory Committee. I think that's really kind of what we're trying to get to, and to make sure that you are representatives of the community. And so you're bringing that perspective in, because otherwise, Chris and I could do the work just fine, but it's really important that it is representative of the community that we're trying to serve. So I just wanted to kind of give that out there, is that we don't anticipate or expect you to do that work. We are here to move the work forward, and in areas where we need to hire help to help us put on National Indigenous Peoples Day, we have that there. But your voices and your perspectives and your concerns and identifying things, like maybe we've got this great plan for National Indigenous Peoples Day, but you've caught something in the cultural master plan that we're missing, one of something that we should be really focusing some of our attention on. So that's kind of where we're looking for the committee help as well. So not only just like organizing things, but really, yeah, your voices are just so critical to making sure that we're serving the community of Canmore as well as we can, as well as not just having this space where Chris and I reinforce each other's ideas, because we're very good at that. We're very good at that.
Yeah, and this is an advisory committee, and it's an advisory committee of council. Council values culture enough that they want to have a committee of community members to make sure the community's best interests are being reflected within culture in our community, right? Because Nikki's right, her and I can sit and plan all day, and then we can pump out the work, but it'll be team Chris and Nikki, and it won't have the same community perspective and the same community feel. You volunteered to be on this committee because you wanted to bring those things to this group and to your community. So it is, Nikki said it exactly the way it's meant to be said. So that's why we are hoping that you will help us with all areas of the cultural master plan. When you stepped forward on this committee, you said, I will be a steward of the cultural master plan. In order to be a steward, you need to be involved in the areas of the plan. Go ahead, Brandy.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. And I'm wondering along the same lines as Wade, if this is the working group for now, and then as the need arises, we think about those smaller committees. I think it's great that that's part of the cultural master plan. But if it seems very laborious for the size of the program of the town and the number of the people in the town as well. So if there's other ways to engage more people, and that is expanding the size of this committee, like that could be another way to achieve that goal of having more voices rather than having more meetings. And maybe there is one or two more meetings here for us, but it's just a lot to kind of wrap a head around at this particular moment. And also knowing that the work plan, I don't know that has the work plan increased threefold for 3 subcommittees. So yeah, I'm just trying to think through that as well. And maybe it's as we go, we figure it out kind of thing.
I'm thinking, Brandy, about the cultural sector support position and the idea that position will be doing community microgrants, like artist microgrants, and knowing that rather than sending the microgrant overview and application that the new person that comes into this job writes to this whole committee, just having it off to a smaller group. So there's not, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. Maybe that subcommittee is just 3 people, right, who are going to look over this and give suggestions. And then one person comes back and brings it. So I think in some cases, rather than having 8 people, whoever, 8 or 9 people, all of us looking at it, having just a subcommittee of 3 come and then come back with their suggestions. And then that's what one person will present rather than all of us doing everything. So that's kind of how I was thinking about it when I was pulling out these positions from the master plan and pulling out these subcommittees. And I do understand that nobody wants more work, but I think it would be more, what's the word I'm looking for? It would be kind of episodic. Like if I'm writing the community grant, the artist grant application, and I need people to look at it, it's just going to be a short-term task force, right? Not a committee that's going to meet monthly or even bi-monthly at that point, but just somebody who's going to get some work done, bring it back to this committee. So like that, who wants to, and I think we always kind of did it, who wants to go aside and work on this? Like Tam would be on a committee or with Jen, and they would work on, different things like that. I'm sorry, I'm formulating as I'm talking what I'm thinking in my head. And because it is all brand new, like I'm trying to just figure out, I'm trying to hear what everybody's saying and make sure it doesn't become too onerous. It doesn't become, that we're meeting 3 times a month, all of us or some of us. That wouldn't be right either. But I'm just trying to think of a way to move it forward where we don't have to talk about every single thing at this committee and go over rubrics in fine detail, and, you know, where we can take that work aside and have fewer people do that. And I think it's difficult to decide things by committee, especially when it's a large committee, where if it's a smaller one, things move along faster.
I think, Chris, you also really nailed or hit the nail on the head. These committees are really not going to meet as frequently as this committee, and there will be a really specific focus. So we don't have a mayor spotlight on the arts, I don't think, in 2022. Is that correct, Chris? Like, I think our mayor spotlight on the arts is 2023. So that's not an urgent, like, the committee will kind of gather to look ahead, but there shouldn't be a significant workload. With Public Art Committee, really we're working on at the mural right now, and National Indigenous Peoples Day, of course, that's coming up in June, but we do already have a pool of people working within the Town of Canmore organization on the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, who are also going to help, and we've got other departments. So this isn't, I think really you can just think about, like, if you're interested in being part of one area of the work plan, you can kind of feel out where you'd like to slot yourself in. So if public art is what's of interest to you, maybe the Public Art Committee, and you'll kind of get that list of dates. But really, like, I just kind of want to dispel any fears that you are responsible for organizing the day, or you are responsible for handling the mural. Chris and I will handle absolutely that. And also, you should not feel obligated that you have to take on something if you don't have the capacity to do it. You're really important on this cultural advisory committee. And yeah, if you're feeling overwhelmed by it, I just really don't feel overwhelmed by it. And yeah, so I hope that helps a little bit. But really, you shouldn't feel a sense of urgency that there's a lot more work coming down the pipe. And it is like, there's lots of people being funneled into this committee here by way of how many positions there are in the arts and events or arts and culture department. So that's why you're seeing this need for more people. But yeah, it's the burden of responsibility is not on you. You're just kind of helping guide this, or using some of your perspectives. You're kind of like, sort of like a confidant as we go through to kind of highlight areas of the master plan that we should be aware of. And if you have an ability to, like, maybe just know every volunteer in Canmore and you're really good at calling out to those people, that's where we would need your help. But really working within your skill set and not forcing you to work outside of that, or to do the Town of Canmore's work for the Town of Canmore. We're here to do that.
I also know that volunteers, which we're grateful that you are, have a need to feel that what they're doing makes a difference. Me, when I volunteer, I want to know that I'm working on something that I'm passionate about, and that I am making a difference, and I'm contributing. I'm not just sitting on a governance committee, unless that's what you're interested in. I don't know quite how to say this, but I just know that when I sit on a committee, I want to make sure that I'm doing something to make things happen, to move things forward, to become involved, and, you know, I'm hoping that some of you feel the same way. I do understand the bandwidth thing, believe me, Wade, because Nikki and I don't need a lot more committee meetings either. We have a lot of meetings as well. So we're not trying to invent meetings just so we can go to more. And we don't want you to have to do that either, but we do understand that some things have to be a side conversation, that we don't just plan a whole mayor spotlight while we're sitting here, all of us together. They can be a side conversation where decisions can be made by smaller groups and then come forward here. So we're trying to make your work meaningful without making it onerous. So I hope that's how it seems. All you, Jen.
Okay, great. So should we just move along then from the Cultural Initiatives Subcommittee and leave that to people who want to email further to to have a conversation with you then. Very good. So then we'll move on to item number 7, which is the cultural sector support. And are you speaking to that as well, Chris?
I think I spoke to that already, Jen. And
Okay.
it's the position where that's that third position where we'd be looking at micro grants for artists and that kind of thing, which we will have to lay out this year so that we can institute it next year, because we do have funding for it now. Next year, we'll start the program, but we have to write the program before we can start the program. So we'd be looking for people who would be willing to look through documents once we hire a new person who will take over that area, right?
Great.
Yeah, that person will also be working on artist education. So be setting up workshops and programs for artists to build capacity within our community and probably work on mentorship programs and that kind of thing. So anybody who would like to assist in that area and work with that person, we don't know who that person is yet. That would be great too. Or we can just do it all here.
Okay, excellent. And so then we'll just be moving on to agenda number 8, which is the other items of business, and ice carving judges. And are you speaking to that, Chris?
Yep. We see how it's always just me and Nikki speaking to things. This is why we need you.
I know.
You're tired of listening to us. We are looking for 3 people to judge ice carving on Saturday, February the 26th. So the responsibility would be that you would come and look at 7 different carvings, and you would have a rubric which you would judge on. And we would have you judging from 3:30 till 5, basically. So I don't know if anybody's interested in doing that. I'm looking for 2 people from here.
I could do it.
Awesome, Christine, thank you. Anyone else interested in doing judging ice carving? And Heidi, oh, and Brandy, look at that. Yes, okay, ice carving. Okay, I'm going to.
I went to see the ones in Banff, so I'm quite curious to see how the ones in Canmore compete.
Awesome, okay. Well, so I've got Christine, Heidi, and Brandy. I'm going to be giving your names to Lauren Thomas in our office, who is leading ice carving, and she will reach out to you to tell you where you need to be, what time, and provide you with a rubric. Okay? Awesome. Thank you so much.
And does anybody else have any other items to present? No. And Chris, do we need a motion to adjourn, or can we just adjourn?
I might just note that our next meeting is on March 14th, just for your reference, and I will send you out a new Zoom link. And if you still, I mean, who knows, like all of the restrictions might be gone by then. So if Zoom works best for people, we'll still schedule on Zoom, and it will still be a live meeting, just like this one is. Just
I guess
so
that
you're aware.
Yeah, I guess that kind of begs the question. So if for some reason we can go back to live meetings, are people interested in meeting live, or would they prefer to meet this way? I am open to doing either. So it's up to you as a committee how you would like to meet.
You can also think about it if you didn't want to say anything just yet. You can keep your eye on the health reports.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather wait to see how it progresses. I'm very keen to meet in person, but it's easier to make a call closer to.
Okay, we'll wait till the week before, and then we'll make a call on how we'll meet. Or we can commit to meeting by Zoom in March, and then in March we can make a call going forward. Let's do that, okay? Okay, March we're gonna Zoom, and in March at our meeting we'll decide how we'll move forward. Okay? All right. So if anybody wants to help on any of those committees, or form a task force subcommittee sort of thing, let myself or Nikki know. Okay, I know Cecile, you had expressed an interest in a couple of areas. You had emailed Nikki and I. Thank you for doing that. And if anybody else is interested, that would be great. If not, I get it. I mean, once a month is enough for meetings. Everybody's got lives, and we get that. We just, yeah, But if you are interested, we'd love that too. Okay. Okay, and we don't need a motion to adjourn.
Excellent. Meeting is over, 7:50. Go
Awesome.
eat chocolate.
Yes, drink wine.